everybody. My name is Chandra Gore, and I'm your moderator today for Power in the Pivot panel. Now, I'm going to say this about the word pivot. There's so many meanings of the word pivot, so that's a whole different subject. We're going to talk about that later on. But let me go ahead and introduce our lovely panelists. We're going to start with Mr. Wilson. Their last name is Darko.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Wilson Darko. He works as a power systems engineer by day, and he is a community. You are in a community. You better do that. And
Mhm.
you are the founder and owner of Kofi Enterprises.
Mhm.
Please tell us a little bit about yourself, real quick.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So, like you mentioned, my name is Wilson Darko, two last names, I guess, right? I was born and raised in the South Bronx, Boogie Down, first generation college grad, first or second generation business owner, rather. My mom owned a business back in Ghana, and I am Ghanaian American as well. Grew up in public housing in the South Bronx, and I went on to become, as you mentioned, an electrical engineer. So, pretty excited about that. And throughout that experience, I kind of learned, many things along the way, developed many, mentor relationships and served as a mentor. And in starting Kofi Enterprises, the goal is to kind of add that value that I receive from others back to the community as well. So I service small businesses as well as early talent professionals, really to understand, like we was mentioning earlier, that mindset concept and how to implement that into your strategy to see success.
Okay, all right then. And next we have Adriana B. Bergin. You are economist and growth strategist. Okay. And the founder of Visions Global Consulting. I love this because my business is Chandra Work Consulting, and I help other people, with their foundations and stuff in public relations. So, Adriana, please tell us about yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. Hello to the panel. So excited to be here. So my name is Adriana Bergin. I'm actually a PhD candidate in economics at Florida State University. So y'all
Okay.
pray for me because I'm trying to graduate and COVID won't let me be great.
You gonna do it.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. I take it. I take it. So I'm almost at the end. My dissertation is on labor economics and the economics of education. And by day, I work as a research scientist for a mathematics curriculum provider. And then I have my company Visions Global, where my clients are mainly nonprofit small business owners, churches, stuff like that. And I really help them just plan. So we do a lot of strategy. 2020 was like pandemic recovery plans, things like that. So I help them really try and get to the next level. And I also dabble in a lot of technology, automation, stuff like that. But then I have my online academy, Visions Global Academy, that we just launched in January, and I'm super excited about that. We have courses on business, economics, and strategy, and I'm excited for this discussion today. Thank you.
Girl, you better get
Ah,
your doctor.
you know what?
Better be doctor. Because I love the fact that you are good. That is major, and especially
Thank you.
you better do it, black lady. You better do it. Now, and last but not least, we have Erika Alcox. I will say this. I know Erika and her business is Alcox Enterprises, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. She is a life coach. She is a vision bringer. She brings visions to life, and she also helps those find what they are missing that they didn't even know they needed. But Erica, please tell everybody about themselves because my introduction. Go ahead.
First, giving honor. Well, I am. I'm Erika Alcox. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, so a lot of people call me Geechee Girl, and I love it. Um, and I am by day, I am a high school educator in family and consumer sciences. Okay. And all right, yeah. And then by all day, I'm a master educator, like she said, a certified life coach, but I do also want to throw in there business coach, because a lot of people try to separate the two, but last time I checked, it's people who run the business. Yeah. So I'm a life and business coach. I do have a food production company because I stir a little, stir some pots on the stove and whatnot. Um, Also into media, artistic direction, management. I am the walking example of that jack of all trades, master of none, but she is the one that will get everything done. Okay, thank you. That's how the saying goes. So just being able to be here and helping people to answer questions for themselves, because sometimes we need a fresh perspective from the outside. And also I am an author. You smell like outside when you just let everything on the outside distract you too much from the stuff you should be doing on the inside. That's how I help people get it together.
Well, thank you. With a side, I'm gonna make you cry sometimes. But we're gonna leave it alone. Um, so guys, as we enter into this panel, this discussion today, um, you know, Wilson, I'm gonna defer to you first. How have you had to pivot your business strategy?
Okay, so yeah, the first business that I actually started was in 2019. It was a travel app that I was developing with one of my friends. And, we're in the development stage over the past 2 years, and then COVID hit, everybody's favorite plot twist, right? And off of that, we kind of had to recognize, hey, a travel app, this might not be the most relevant thing to offer to the marketplace, right? So we therefore had to pivot into another business venture that we did mutually, as well as the business that I started, which is Kofi Enterprises. And, kind of in shifting to Kofi Enterprises, I identified, what is a value add to the market right now? What is a problem that in the most immediate and relevant sense I can answer? And that was essentially that strategy consulting that, with the rise of new businesses or career pivots that a lot of people have, it's a very relevant thing in the immediate moment. So in building that business, I'm essentially answering that problem, which every business should air to do.
Okay. You said app. I'm like, okay, well, but okay. So, Adriana, same question. Being that because you're studying in school too as well. So, how have you had to pivot your business strategy?
Yeah, I think for me, like you were saying, even with COVID, I had to pivot to the times and then also remember to pivot what people don't have because I am in the business consulting industry. Most people consider that to be extremely saturated. Like everybody is a consultant now. So for me, I pivoted to my clients what they didn't have. And the average small business owner doesn't have access to an economist. So when you see my marketing and my strategy and my branding, you'll see me rely heavily on that because that's not necessarily what's in the market. And then the other thing is 2020, like I said before, I was doing strategic plans, I was doing marketing plans, and then half of my clients, get shut down and stuff like that. Okay, we can't market right now. Technically, we're recovering, right? So I had to switch to how do you recover? What do you do? How do you keep your team, the morale up when they can't come into the salon or they can't come into the store, stuff like that. So we had to switch our service providing to do what people needed right now, and I think that's one of the biggest things we do when we pivot.
And I think that, understanding the role of an economist is very, very important because a lot of, and this is from the consulting side of me, I tell people to always look at, the 3 to 5, the 7, and the 10 year. Look at the whole scheme of things in the industry that you're in. Look at the trends. Look at how the taxes and look at how, laws are going to take place and look at how, the different how they're looking to tax or how they're looking to change what's going to affect your industry. So an economist is what's going to help you to understand that data that you are going to pull from your county, from your state, and from your national. So that's the biggest thing that a lot of people don't really realize that they need in their business. And I'm so glad that
Absolutely.
you exist. And
Thank you.
me telling a business owner, because I get the RCA dog, like, what? And I'm like, listen, this will help you when you putting your business plan together, because no one wants to think about the all of that far down the road. and how the laws that are placed that are being written today do not affect you until 10, 15, 20 years down the line, because it has to go through the cycle. So I love the fact that you offer that service. Erica, you are the ultimate, go ahead and tell us, how have you had to pivot your business strategy as well?
Well, being a public school educator, I'm used to having to fill 90-minute blocks of time, and making that work for my students, and then somehow in between, because when you're an entrepreneur, that never turns off. And the luxury that I have is that the subject matter that I teach, family and consumer sciences, food and nutrition, food science, entrepreneurship, just everything, is what a lot of people used to call home economics. Um, it was a little collar pop, brush your shoulder off for me when we went into the quarantine, because now all of a sudden, all your children are there and they're hungry and they have to eat. And you just realize that your child is 14, 15 years old and does not know how to prepare a healthy meal outside of calling Uber, which is on pause for a moment, or microwaving everything. And then you get into how they're responding to these meals that aren't exactly nutritionally sound. And you begin to say, you know what? They need to teach this in school. We do teach it in school if they stop taking it out to school. So it was a golden hour, a golden moment, a teachable moment for me, not only as an educator, but also as an entrepreneur, because I have a lot of people may be familiar with a meme that went viral in summer 2018 when my son asked me what was for dinner while he was eating lunch. And I told him to use his in-school stomach. And it went viral, and Ricky Smiley even used it. Of course, they cut my logo off, but that was me. And the in-school stomach was showing them how to, when you're in school, you're on a schedule. You don't eat every 5 minutes a day. So my point is that it was a golden moment for me to use not only what I do as my career, but also the businesses that I've built around educating people about the things that we tend to see as not important are really very key. Everybody should have life skills. Everybody should know how to prepare at least 3, dare I say 5, but at least 3 meals that don't include ripping open a box and sliding it in the microwave and hitting, 4 minutes. It's something that goes into how we then now facilitate the rest of our day. Because if we're feeling lethargic, if we're feeling, less than energized about anything, then the input, the charisma that we put into our work is going to show, or even the lack of it. So being able to pivot from not having time, because that was the main pivot for me as an educator, was not having the time. I have 4 full-time jobs, all of them. And before the quarantine, I didn't understand how I was doing it and being able to fulfill all of my obligations before, because I couldn't do the other stuff until after 4 or 5 o'clock, on top of being a solo parent. I don't know how I did it. Out of body experience, who knows? But once the quarantine started, and then now I was given all of that time back, all of that time where I was like, I could do this from the house. And people are like, oh, you can't teach from the house. Well, look what we're doing now, teaching from the house. Being able to pivot and manage time, and then be able to show people how to manage that time to their benefit. That's how I've had to pivot my business. That's the main thing, because as e-commerce, you're going to always be online. It's just a matter of how you're going to manage your time to really, magnify your results.
And so each one of you have shown how you've had to do the ultimate pivot. But the definition that I like about pivot is and this is where I'm going to read it, because if you notice that a pivot is the most integral part of something. It's the central focus point, right? So each one of you are that most important part of your business. So what do you feel that are great examples of pivots in our time? Like what have you found that have been the greatest examples? Um Whoever wants to go first, because I don't want to keep calling people out. I'm not a teacher.
I I do have to say the one that really warmed my heart. I'm a person that, as I'm sure all of us are, the philanthropic part, the compassion. Sometimes we're in here as entrepreneurs and all we could care about or talk about is the bottom line, of course, because if it's not making dollars, why are you doing it, But to be able to see people tap into the compassionate side of being a business owner and being able to provide resources, such as when hand sanitizer, was nowhere to be found. And people who were normally generating a lot of the alcohol and the liquor, the top shelf liquors and everything, they began to make the hand sanitizer because they had the equipment to do so. I liked that. That will always be my main yes, you did that type thing, to where they're seeing there was a need. And a lot of them, the ones that I was following closely, a lot of them, they didn't turn that into, let's skyrocket the prices. Of course, they would be monitored, but a lot of people produced it and gave it away to people in need, and just trying to help form some type of balance. So that's the pivot that I respect and honor and cheer on the most.
So a space that I always try to celebrate or just a concept when it comes to like pivoting, I always celebrate innovation, right? Especially as an engineer, someone in tech, the ability to kind of look beyond where we immediately are is priceless, right? So, and my girlfriend is big into fashion. Like, one place that she celebrates, or this individual rather, Anifa Mwemba, I believe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, right? And she's a 29-year-old Congolese fashion designer. She works for a fashion brand, Hanifa, right? And this past year, she created the very first 3D virtual fashion show. So I don't know if y'all saw it. It's pretty much all of the same clothes.
Right down the street, yes.
Yeah. So
She's right in Titans. Go ahead, yes.
And kind of seeing that level of innovation, we look at kind of the restrictions that COVID gave this past year. You can't go outside, you can't be like around a bunch of people. And, for her to innovate the space of fashion in that manner, and I'm not a big fashion person. I'm more like tech and engineering, sports or whatever. But in kind of seeing that, that's amazing, right? That's fire to kind of see a problem even before it's there, identify a solution for it in such a creative way, to the point where she has potentially shifted that industry altogether. So I think kind of, looking back to our own personal businesses, understand for yourself, what is the opportunity to change the game? As Erika mentioned, it can't just come down to just, I'm trying to make money. That's cool, but when you can look beyond money as, or understand it rather as a tool rather than the end point, you can really find the full scope of where you can get to. So I always try to emphasize that for any business person or career, make sure you understand, how can I use this as a tool or resource to change the world.
And I'll give two really quickly because he killed that. I loved it. And I think we'll just keep going with the market, people who disrupt the markets. So we already talked about them, but I really liked Uber. And I think Uber, people forget how Uber impacted the taxi cab industry, right? Where it took people decades to save up like what, $700,000 so they could get their taxi medallion and drive their own taxi. So a lot of them were stuck in the poverty of just driving. Then Uber enters the market, makes anybody a taxi cab driver pretty much, right? And I think like in 2015, you needed like $600,000 or $700,000 to get a taxi medallion. Now it's like 100 or 200K. Why? Because it's not as valuable anymore. Uber completely disrupts the market. Then the other one I like is more fun, Rihanna, right? With her Fenty Beauty, how she comes into the beauty industry, changes the game, not only with the shades, the multiple shades, but the marketing having people who were not conventionally beautiful in there, having pushing against ageism, with I think one of her people were like 70, 80 years old. So people who disrupt markets pivot the best because, like Wilson was saying, those markets are never the same.
And I want to say this: Uber started in Baltimore with the hacks. Okay, so we're gonna leave it at that because y'all not gonna sit up there and not give Baltimore its due. Okay,
Yes.
because that's what started. They came and they took it from Baltimore. Okay, so now look, that's innovation right there. Because you need to go get your chicken box, you go down there, and you can get somebody to drive you over there and drive you back. So I'm just saying, don't like. I love Uber and everything, but they had it first. Okay.
Yes.
So this I want to ask you all. So how can an entrepreneur create a successful pivot strategy? Because I know from when I'm working with my clients, and because their strategy, their pivot strategy has to translate into media opportunities as well. So we have to be able to take what we do when we're doing the foundational setup and the business setup, and also as a publicist, I have to make sure that people know the story. So, how can you all, give me some great tips on how an entrepreneur can create a successful business, a pivot strategy?
Well, I think it kind of comes down to your ability to create a effective business strategy to begin with, right? In addition to knowing how to pivot, you have to know how to structure it to start, right? And my understanding of that is, first and foremost, what's your big picture? What's your why? What is the reason that you're trying to, in this case of a pivot, why are you trying to pivot, right? What is the success potential? What is the failure potential of that thing that you're trying to go into? In addition to that, as an engineer, we speak on something called like failure analysis or failure mechanics, right? What went wrong, if you could understand it, is that in your current strategy, and how can you make sure you avoid those problems down the line, right? Ultimately, you want to have contingency plans in place for anything that is a plot twist of what you're dealing with now, or potential unknowns that you might have to deal with down the line, right? So it is very important that you lean into that stuff. And I was, in my fraternity, you learn the term, proper preparation promotes proper performance, right? If you just freestyle and operate off of emotion in terms of your business plan, God bless, right? That can be kind of a ambitious and not so exciting learning experience. So I always think it's important to prepare properly, do your research, and know what you're getting into. And if necessary, have pivot plans baked into your pivot plan of, if this pivot doesn't work, these are the alternatives that I can go into as well. So that's just something to consider.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And I think too, he's talking about really looking at your core business structure. And I think along with that, you have to pivot for opportunities. Like, where do you want the company to go? What areas are you trying to tap into? What markets, whether it's city or even a different type of audience that you want to begin to pivot to. And that will really help your strategy, because sometimes we pivot for today, we really should be pivoting for tomorrow, but you can't get there if that core business strategy isn't strong, like he was saying, because then you get out there without a plan. So once you pivot and you have their attention, now what's the plan? What's the system and the process that you begin to roll new potential customers or clientele through? So that's what I would say.
And to piggyback with what they're saying about making sure you have a plan that you can actually execute. Can you be authentic? Just can you be authentic while you're doing it? I've seen so many people, not to knock, trying it, but sometimes I think we're not all the way honest because we're operating out of survival, and we'll jump on any and every trend. Y'all not gonna find me on TikTok doing all of the dances because it's too much elbow. I'm straight 80s and 90s. Okay, give me the, you see what I'm saying? But I'm on TikTok. So with, to make that pivot, perfect example. I'm perfectly fine on Facebook and Instagram and, I knew that Snapchat, I was like, "Ah, I know it's the thing, but this don't make sense. This ain't my ministry. So we gonna back out of that one. So I wasn't going to too much force myself to try to be comfortable, because authenticity is part of my brand story. So everybody should revisit their brand story and see what story they're telling their audience, and just making sure that they are staying in compliance with their authenticity when they begin to pivot to something else. If it's going to it's a difference between being taken out of your comfort zone versus using a voice that ain't yours. That's two totally different things. So just being able to make sure people vow to themselves to stay authentic, and in that same breath, staying authentic and unique, not taking somebody else's content and claiming it. It's okay to be inspired, okay, but just remain authentic.
Um, you stop stealing people's stuff. Period. Okay, that's all. Be yourself. Okay,
Yes.
like
Be
God,
yourself.
your mama and them gave you one name. Use your name. Use your ideas. Use who you are. That's. I'm sorry. You said it's be inspired. No, that's stealing. When they crop and be selective about what they do, that's stealing. That's theft. That is IP. That is theft of intellectual property. I get.
Well,
I know it's free. I know it's out there, but that don't mean mimic it word for word. Just
right. Yeah,
sprinkle
that's where
yourself
you draw
on
the
it, maybe.
line. That's where you
You
draw the
know.
line in the sand. So, yeah, being yourself, there ain't nobody doing that. Ain't nobody can do it like you. That's the hardest stuff out there, is being you, you know?
And that's the ultimate, like, and that's my suggestion, for an entrepreneur to create a successful pivot strategy. Pivot to being yourself. Do so, like,
That's
and this is
real.
where I think a lot of times we do kind of, because we can spot inauthenticity from a mile away. You know what I'm saying? So should be part of your strategy to be successful. Every one of you all brought really great points, and all of it makes sense. If everybody combine those, like what did the Captain Planet? Then here we have Captain Planet. Everything is great. You go save the day. Excuse me. So I mean, what I'm looking at this last question. I'm going to go into it. What things should be a priority when creating a pivot strategy? What do y'all have? What do y'all have for that?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to recognize, when it comes to building that strategy, what is the problem that you're solving, right? You can have any kind of business that, I sell applesauce in cans in Cambodia. Well, if there's not an interest for applesauce in cans in Cambodia, it doesn't serve me for that to be my business structure, right? So what problem are you solving for people? How are you helping the next person, right? What is your mission as a business? What are your core structures or principles, if you would? And how can you make sure that even if you adjust different areas of your business, you're still able to be committing to those values, right? I think it's important, as you mentioned earlier, Chandra, of like, you have to be loyal to that mission, that bigger picture of your business. Everything else is adjustable, whether that's your target audience, your immediate offerings, anything like that. But you have to be loyal to that greater mission, right? From there, what is the offerings that can be supporting to that mission that you're trying to, achieve, right? Uh, if that is now something that you have to change in your pivot strategy, so be it. As long as, again, it completes that initial mission. So that's kind of my understanding there as well.
Yeah, and I think he hit the nail on the head, but I'll just add that, the adaptability piece he talked about, if you pivot and that doesn't land like you want to, okay, go back to the drawing board, restructure and pivot again. And I think so many times, I hate to use the word, but entrepreneurs are just whining, you pivot and like he said, you stay strong to the mission until you hit the core, and even though our target audience does change, don't forget to pivot to your people. You know, particularly the people who you know are going to tap in and buy in so that you can have that level of success that you need. But Wilson did an amazing job. He covered it.
That's it for the Power and the Pivot panel. I thank everyone for being here today, and I think it's a wrap, guys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much. I
again.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.
You
Also,
did a
Well,
great job as moderating as well.
Yes.
yes.
Your
yeah, I
life
try.
coach would be very proud of you, girl.
I'm happy. Thank you. I appreciate it.